Hello and welcome to,
Renaissance in Parallel. My name is Jacqueline.
and I'm Krista. Thank you for joining us.
If you've joined us before, you'll know that we do a monthly theme, and this month's theme is sorry about my dog, the dark side of pop culture and media. And what we're talking about here is not just the way that TV, movies, and fashion influence our minds, but also kind of how they are part of human trafficking and other physically negative things in our society. Yeah. Uh, so we could talk about sex trafficking today. A lot of people already have heard about how children are abducted from amusement parks. There's a lot of talk right now because of the Super Bowl happening on Sunday and the remarks made by the Texas governor last year, which was how he claimed that the Super Bowl was the most made that day the highest sex traffic or human trafficking day in the United States, which is not,
That's the whole country.
yeah.
Like, that's crazy.
But he just said that there's not like statistics to support it. And if you Google it, you'll find articles
Well,
saying like, no,
you
it's
know,
really not. Blah, blah, blah,
it
blah,
it
blah.
there definitely seems like there is some kind of I don't know if he is for the wall or not, but that definitely seems like something that somebody would say if they wanted to, you know, because like that would be a legitimate reason
Mm-hmm.
to create a physical barrier, especially in Texas, to keep people from bringing children over to the other side. Because I've heard that is one of the arguments for the wall, is that it would reduce human trafficking
Mm-hmm.
over the wall or over the border.
The argument I keep seeing about that supports his idea of the Super Bowl and other um, large sports events is that they think that with people, lots more people coming into the area, the desire for sex workers is higher. And so there's more people being abducted to satisfy that need, which I think is preposterous. Um, People don't go to the Super Bowl to like have
Yeah, there's
sex with
probably easier ways to
prostitutes.
get it in
Like
than to go to the Super Bowl.
people spent a ton of money like going to the Super Bowl. It's
Where
ridiculous.
what where did it take place last year?
Houston, I think,
Okay, so it
maybe
took
Dallas. I
place
don't
in
know.
Texas.
It was in Texas, and that's why he was
Yeah,
the one who said it. This year,
yeah.
it's in Atlanta, which is already a very high traffic human trafficking city. All
Now,
big
how
cities
how is
are.
that? Because I you need like some kind of is do you need any kind of like documentation to bring like a child on a plane? Like I've never done it before, but I like my I know somebody who
I
sent
don't think
their
so.
kid on a plane by themselves. Like this was probably like 10 or 15 years ago, but they sent their kid on a plane by themselves across the
Mm-hmm.
country without an
Kyle's done
adult with
that as a
them.
kid.
That's crazy to me that you can do that. Like,
It's not nearly as common as it is anymore, but they don't generally use like they don't use commercial flights to traffic people.
yeah.
Um
But I mean, in Atlanta, like, what else would you? I mean, do you think that
car.
there's less of a risk if it's happening like more in the center of the country rather than, you know?
No, there's so this the human trafficking are rings or nationwide organizations. So the people the people who abduct somebody in Portland are the same people who abduct somebody in Miami generally. And there may be multiple rings, but essentially it's like it's a network. So when the FBI gets involved and rescues people, but then they bring them to a sanctuary city like Portland, they're bringing
Where
them
you
right
haven't
back to the
again.
same people.
Yeah.
And Portland is per capita probably the highest human trafficking city in the United States. So why that's the drop off point for
Yeah,
people
that's
who were
strange. Is
rescued
that
in Florida
generally
or
where the sanctuary cities are?
wherever. What?
Is that generally where the sanctuary cities are? Because you said there were a few other hotspots.
Yeah. Um Tampa Tampa does a lot, Miami does a lot, Atlanta does, but basically there's like FBI hubs in different cities because they don't really work outside of cities. Like it's not like in these cities it's a centralization of power, so they can kind of go from one to the next, and people who have been rescued in one area is sent to another area of the country just to end up in the same sex trafficking ring situation anyway. And I think our FBI system is a I would be surprised that they're that naive that they don't know what they're doing. But that's not really have anything to do with media. But so getting back to Super Bowl
I mean, it
and the
kind of does
sports.
because there are like a considerable amount of TV shows that try and make the
Oh, that's a good point.
FBI and the government in general seem like kind puppy dogs a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you've got like they're they're the like the shining knight in shining armor or whatever, always coming in to save the day, always doing the right thing, always got the best intentions and everything. And there's like numerous, like I because I'm a sucker for like procedural cop shows and stuff
Mm-hmm.
like that. So like, and I like watch like Criminal Minds and stuff like that, and they definitely like they try and tell you like this is the cause and this is the cure and this is like, these are the good guys and those are the bad guys. And like, yeah.
And individual FBI officers may be like that.
Oh
That
yeah,
they
sure.
probably do think that they're doing the right thing.
Well, that's the
But
same
the
thing. Like there are
system,
bad cops out there. That doesn't mean that all cops are bad.
that system of organization is set up to perpetuate a system of crime. It's not set up to solve anything. And how many times do you see in like Law and Order and whatever show how people go in these women end up in like what do you call it when they relocate somebody?
Witness protection.
Yeah, witness protection. That doesn't happen. Like they make it seem like it happens all the
Yeah, I
time
know.
for everybody. It
Witness
barely
protection and
happens.
quicksand are two
Like
things that TV convinced me were a lot more common than they actually turned out to be.
I think the most vulnerable um of people for human sex trafficking is children. Um I've worked with children
I mean,
who have
it's
been rescued
easier
from
to
that.
they're still pliable. Like you can teach them instead of having somebody who's older and has a good like idea of what is right and what is wrong and what is okay or isn't. It's probably like, I don't know, more
I
more
mean,
challenging to
physically
get them
they're
to do what you
easier to
want.
abduct also.
But yeah,
Because 50-pound child versus a 150-pound human. Like, I mean, adult. They're all
there's probably like
adult.
a
It's
level of
much
like
easier.
Stockholm
Um,
syndrome and everything
so
too.
when we talk about like these events and stuff, I really don't think that it's because there's a higher demand and freaking sex workers. It's ridiculous. It's
That just
because
seems like a
people are
weird thing to
distracted.
say.
It's distracted. Yes, there are more police, but those police aren't really necessarily looking for sex traffickers. They're like trying to control the crowds that are there for the Super Bowl. And it's so much easier. The more commotion that's going on, the easier it is to abduct someone. because you don't even need a distraction. The environment is a distraction.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, I get that, like, as a parent who is sometimes has the kids like two against one, like it's very easy to just take your eyes off them for 1 second and then not know where they are. Like it happens to everybody. And, you know, uh whenever it's silly, like whenever we leave town or we go like on a trip together or something, like I coordinate outfits with the kids, which obviously isn't going to do anything if somebody like has the intention to take them and hurt them. But in case they like wander off, it's easier to be like, hey, dude, I know what they're wearing, so I'm like, hey, do you know where this kid with a like striped shirt and yellow pants or whatever, instead of like trying to remember what the last thing that they were wearing is, because I'm wearing the same thing. Because that's the first thing that somebody's going to ask you is like, what were they wearing when they went missing? Because that makes it easiest to find them again. So that's, but again, it's not helpful if somebody like actually has the intention of taking them, because the first thing they're going to do is change their clothes. There's like you can do like little tattoos or something. I don't know. There's little tricks and stuff, but I mean, if somebody like
they rarely change the children's shoes.
Interesting.
So if not
because it's hard to know what size they're gonna wear.
Know what shoes your child is wearing. That helps. They hardly ever do that. But you know, the way that they have portrayed kidnapping or abduction of children in the media is not like how it happens. It's not some guy like in the park who's just a random sicko that wants to abduct a child.
About before, like Criminal Minds will tell you that 90% of abductions happen by like the father or the uncle or the next door neighbor or something.
Well, see, the statistics are skewed to begin with, just because they can really only make statistics from cases that are solved.
That's fair.
And when it is a family member or somebody that is known, it is much more solvable. So here you have like the stack of solved cases where it's a parental dispute or an aunt taking a child away from the mother because of whatever reason, or the occasional sicko. I don't know if you remember what was that guy in Pittsfield that did it? No. What is his name? Oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh.
You know who I'm talking about. Louis Lent. Okay?
No, that's not who I was thinking.
Oh. Well, anyway. He abducted children and raped and killed them. Anyway, in our own town, do you remember that movie theater that was out like on, I think, the end of West Street, like as you're going out of town to like New York? There was like the Budget movie theater. A long time ago. Well, that's where he worked there, and he would like watch the kids, and then one day he was just like, I'm taking this kid.
Ooh, that's so like, maybe I was like too young to know about it or something.
Yeah, it was
years younger than you.
A long time.
Yeah.
Ago.
Because I don't really, I have a vague memory of there being like a couple of.
Did you go to Herberg or Reed?
I went to Herberg.
What's her face? Did you have Miss Sunny as a music teacher? It's like telling.
I don't know. I remember her.
She's like a crazy old lady.
Yeah, I remember her because everybody thought she was weird because she drank catnip tea.
Well, she went crazy because she saw one of the children who was abducted on his way home from school that day. He was riding his bike in the rain, and she offered him a ride, and he turned her down. I'm like, that's got to be why she went nuts, because she was essentially the last person to see him alive, other than the guy, you know. Anyway.
Mom, can I fit on the tortilla?
I guess. Can you open it yourself?
Getting back to this. So they make it seem like...
Can you close my door, please?
You know, either it's a random stranger danger, or it's a family member or friend of the family, whatever. But in reality, most of the time, it is one of these networked traffickers. And what they do is they are like, it's a crime of opportunity. They usually don't like necessarily
Like
stalk children.
Risk, basically, like depending on like how risky it is to take the kid or whatever.
They also target women. It's basically women and children, and like, yes, it can be men, especially gay men, but they're not usually like abducted. They're usually like tricked into joining it and then disappear. And then kind of the same thing for runaways, like teen runaways. But like, for example, someone I know was nearly abducted in Portland, and essentially almost twice. But the more immediate one was these two guys.
Twice?
Yes.
That's scary.
Yeah.
Like by the same people?
Not the same. No, not the same. One time it was one guy with like a friend waiting in the car, and the other time it was two guys, but not the same guys, but probably the same trafficker ring.
That's so creepy.
In the same city in Portland.
When we were in high school, Panda and I were walking to school one day. I'm glad I wasn't walking by myself. I used to sneak her over, and like she would sleep over my house on school nights because I wasn't allowed to have friends on school night. So we were walking to school, and these two older guys were like sitting in this car right outside of Morningside, like trying to get us to get in the car and come with them. It was so weird. And it's not, you would think that like,
yeah,
because I always felt like I was safe in like being weird, I guess, you know, like having like short hair and glasses and like dressing weird. I was like, I'm not going to be a target for this because they're looking for like attractive people or whatever. But it's really not like that.
No, because there's a freak for all freaks. Like, sorry. But okay, let me just tell you what it was like. So we have like your scenario, which I think is not as common, especially nowadays, where they're trying to lure kids away, like, or because they have a lost puppy, can you help me find it? Or I've got candy in my van. Like, for the most part, I think those things are scare tactics, which they put in movies and videos and blah, blah, blah. And it prevents you from knowing what a real abduction is like. Mine was a guy driving, when it was me and I was 4, I was driving or walking home from a neighbor's house on the next street because my cousin, who was supposed to be watching me, who was 13, I think at the time. No, he wasn't at all. Anyway, he was supposed to be watching me, and I was like, I didn't want to be at his friend's house anymore because they were just playing video games and it was boring. So I walked home by myself, and some guy in a black sedan like is driving past, and he like driving down our street, and he slows down when he sees me, and then I start walking faster and he's driving a little faster, and I start running and he drives faster, and I made it back to my house and locked the front door, and then I hid in the clothes dryer with the like with the bathroom door open, so that I was like, oh, maybe if the door's open and he can quickly look in here and see I'm not in there, he won't come in. And so he like banged on the door. He couldn't break down the door.
Whoa.
So he banged on the front door, but he did not get in. And he was like screaming. I don't know what it was, but whatever. Anyway, in Portland, this was probably, it wasn't that long ago. I think it was like 2005. Like, it was in the last, oh, I guess that is a while ago. Whatever. It happened twice to the same person in the last 15 years. And one time was a man, she was bringing her groceries into her apartment, and a man that she didn't know that looked super sketchy asked if he could help her bring her groceries in. So he was trying to like get into her apartment. And she was like, no. He asked like 3 times. She said no each time. And then she went up to her apartment, put the groceries down, and she had a firearm. And she went into her bedroom and closed the door. And the guy was banging on her front door. And she said she was calling the police at the same time. And she told him that she's calling the police. She has a firearm. If he enters her home, she'll shoot. And he left. Never caught that guy. The other time, which is much more likely, frequent, I think, is 2 guys just hopped out of the van, grabbed her by the one grabbed her by the arms, one grabbed her by the legs, and they went to throw her inside the van. But a guy on the street that saw her, who had a firearm, yelled, "Stop, that's my wife, I'll shoot." And they just dropped her and ran. So,
Holy shit.
yeah.
I don't know.
A petite lady, 90 pounds. So, like, if you're bigger, you're less likely to get abducted. More of the story. Fat means you live. Just kidding. But so those are like situations that they don't show those that on TV shows. They show it as like people being drugged in a bar. And like how many times are like do they tell you, "Oh, put a coaster over your drink so you don't get roofied?" Like that doesn't really even happen. But you see it over and over again in those TV shows where people are drugged at a bar. Or
because they want to make you think that there's an easy way to avoid it,
yeah,
so you don't worry.
Yeah, they want you to worry. They want you to obsess about it. But it's a way to create superstitions in people. Like, oh, I gotta always put a coaster on top of my beer, or I always need to have my beer in my hand so that nobody slips something in my drink. Or I can't accept a drink from a stranger because he's drugged me. Like, it makes women fearful every time that they go out to a bar when they're trying to go out to have fun and not stress.
Yeah.
So that it creates a situation where you always are stressed out and you're creating these weird neuroses about around television shows you don't even necessarily remember watching. And like to your brain, whether you're watching something fiction or you're watching 2020, which I might argue everything is fiction on television, your brain doesn't know the difference between fiction and nonfiction. TV is TV, and in your brain, that is just like factual. You forget about where you see things. I was watching something
last night that like had my heart racing, and I had to sit there and tell myself like, it's not real. It's not real. Like, stop being crazy. Like, it's just a TV show.
And you know, there's lots and lots of stories you find of children in Hollywood being abused sexually or otherwise. And it's not a coincidence. Like, it's not a coincidence. They're like Hollywood is implicit in all of this. And
I don't know how
you can connect
I'm
the
not
dots.
like trying to be judgy because I don't know. But like I don't know how parents can do that to their kids, like put them into that world. Like I feel so bad seeing like all of these child actors and everything, and every single one of them is so messed up. Mm. They're so messed up, and it's just they never even stood a chance.
Sometimes
Macaulay Culkin's off his rocker.
Oh,
I don't even know what happened to the Olsens. Like, I don't know. I don't know, man.
And the thing is like most of these I don't know. I was trying to say children and child at the same time. So most of these child actors come from families that are from Hollywood. And probably the same things happen to these parents. And they may not, at this point, know the difference between right and wrong because they've been so
Why would you even want to have kids and bring kids into that, though? That's the thing that, like, really, I don't know.
It's a whole other mindset. Like,
This is like people don't get
it's just
married
part
like
of their.
to be married in Hollywood.
Mm,
They
it's
don't.
part of.
They
It's a different culture. We don't have the same values that they have.
yeah,
They
that's
have
it.
like no values.
We're like living in the same world, but not.
Their reality is different than ours.
Yeah.
They're like next to each other. They're like two dreams that are almost the same.
People like to draw the line of like wealth, where it's like normal people and then there's the wealthy people. But it's being under the spotlight is a completely different thing. Where there are people with a lot of wealth who aren't under the spotlight. And there are people under the spotlight who might not necessarily have a lot of wealth or may have had wealth and wasted it or whatever. But it's not the money that makes people go crazy.
No, it's not necessarily. But also, I think that generally most people who are essentially poor, I guess, like living paycheck to paycheck, let's say, they think of like doctors and people who are in upper middle class as being rich. But that's not what rich is. Like those are like that's maybe the richest that they could hope to be, but that is in the grand scheme of wealth and power, those people are like nothing.
That's kind of where I'm like, the whole idea of being like a liberal or being on the left or whatever is very prevalent in like Hollywood.
Oh yeah.
And
yeah.
they really have no reason for wanting to vote for certain things and wanting, unless there's something else there. You know what I mean? Like, because if they wanted to help like people to be able to afford health insurance or to have like shelters or have this or that, like they could just donate more of their money instead of spending like $10,000 on a dress that they're going to wear like one night.
Mm-hmm.
So their like actions aren't like the people like who talk about climate change and everything, who like get up on their public platform and they're all about like, this is what you need to do to change the world, while they're like taking a jet from here to there and they have like a suit that they only wear once and stuff like that, where like there's a lot of talk happening.
Yeah.
There's definitely something more behind that than what they want you to think.
They don't need to do anything. Like they can. It's enough today to be just a spokesperson, like in Hollywood. You don't actually have to do anything. I can tell you when I went in 2008 and was rebuilding in New Orleans with Habitat, it was when there was like some,
Alyssa Milano, right?
Yeah, there was like some big NBA thing.
Story because she's such a doofus.
I think it was the NBA Finals or something like that. Was in New Orleans that year. So Alyssa Milano was one of them, and a bunch of other basketball players came onto our job site, the job site where I was, and there was only like, we had a team of probably 30 people, and only 4 or 5 of us were allowed to stay, and we got booted to a different job site, and they came in with like all this catering food and stuff, and then the freaking Habitat people weren't allowed to eat it. They're like, it's for the talent. And I wasn't there, but the people in my group told me about it. And they did eat the snacks. But anyway, so these basketball players came, and they just would put up like the studs for one wall, which was already put together and everything. They just like, it's all framed, and the house is like 25, or it was like 30 feet wide, and they took the frame and then they just stood it up, and then people from our group drilled the holes in. Alyssa Milano took one nail that was not even relative to the project and hammered it in. And after that, they all left. And they made it was called NBA Helps, and they made it seem like that these people from Hollywood and the basketball players freaking did anything, but they didn't. We built those houses. I built the stairs, damn it. Like,
Well, it's kind of like, was it like Brad Pitt? I can't remember. Somebody recently came under fire because like when the Hurricane Katrina thing happened, they like built a bunch of houses.
yes.
But the houses have all like fallen
they're
apart
crap.
now.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. And
It was
he's
Brad
like,
Pitt.
oh well, I had nothing to do with that actual building of the houses or the
It
materials.
was Brad Pitt. He did, in his defense, he donated a bunch of money for it.
Yeah.
But they used shitty contractors for it, and essentially instead of being like homes forever, it was homes for a day, and it was like a shanty town. Whereas you take like Habitat, we built.
Well, it sounds like they didn't use the quality of materials that they may, or this is just speculation, of course. But I don't know.
I didn't get to see him in person because at the time, which this was like 2.5 years after Katrina and everything was still devastated, and it was out of the news and everything. His organization was all caught up in red tape. So it had been in the works for 2.5 years, and nothing had happened because the city of New Orleans was being weird about it, and whatever. But in the meantime, probably rightfully so, because he was trying to bring in outside crappy contractors. Anyway, but in the meantime, Habitat was building this whole, what they called Musicians Village, where they put up like 16 blocks or something like that. Beautiful homes in all different like pastel colors. They were like all the same, but they all had like just different pastel colors. And musicians and retired musicians all lived there. They all got to live there. And I think they paid mortgages or something, but with like zero interest or something like that. Yeah. Habitat doesn't typically just give away homes. But they help people build or rebuild their own home, or
wasn't it like with the Brad Pitt thing was on like a curve, like based on how much money you had to pay for the houses? So like everybody paid a different amount for them or something?
Not sure. But Habitat built some really great houses, and I helped work on 4 of them. And NBA was there for half an hour and then was gone. Melissa,
and most of it was eating the food that you weren't allowed to touch.
They didn't end up eating any of it. So like,
oh my gosh, really?
People on the work crew like brought it home and stuff like that. But it was just like, it was so stupid. Alyssa Milano was there for 15 minutes, and half of it was makeup.
With the exception of Charmed, I did watch Charmed. The only thing that I've heard from her is that sitting in on the Kavanaugh hearings, and was it her that recently said that the MAGA hat is the new white hood or something?
I don't know, maybe.
She's gotten very vocal, very politically vocal.
That's because otherwise she's totally irrelevant.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the thing. She's been irrelevant since Charmed. So, like...
Was it her? I'm looking it up right now.
I'm like the slowest knitter in the whole world.
Yeah, it was her. You're right. Self-proclaimed activist. That's great.
Yep.
I love whoever... Oh, it's Fox. Never mind. But that's very true.
Fox or Vox?
Fox, Fox.
Oh, okay.
Called her a self-proclaimed activist. Alyssa Milano doubled down on her controversial tweet where she compared Make America Great Again hats to... Now I have to click on it. I wish there was more. Then I don't have to click.
To the KKK
probably
white hood. Yeah.
Oh, to the new white hood.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Not. So I feel like the takeaway from this is you should not be scared about going to a park with your child, because that's not the type of situation where human traffickers are going to abduct your kid. It's like on a busy city street. It's when, you know, it's more, they often do target like concerts and stuff, because you think about when somebody leaves, it's mostly when people leave events, they're all coming out in a herd, and you can't necessarily see anybody that you're with. And it would be so easy for your kid just to be like, bye.
And it is. It really is easy to lose track of them.
And I put your child on a leash. I don't care. Like,
I've been thinking about that.
Like the retractable kind. It can just be like pinned into your pocket or on your wrist or something like that. And on theirs, like you get one of those like retractable wristband things and put one on your kid, nobody could take your child without them knowing, because you'd be like, hey, why is there it would retract all the way back into your wrist.
When I was a little kid, my mom had one of those leashes for me, and she kept it in like my sock drawer as like a threat. But she never actually used it. And I thought that it was so horrible until I became a parent and I realized like how easy it is. Like I literally took my eyes off of my daughter for like 5 seconds, and she tried to run straight into the road.
Mm-hmm.
Like just into the road, because kids are stupid. They are. So if some stranger like walks up to them and says like, hey, are you looking for your mom? I saw her over here. They're going to fall for it.
Kids don't have a sense of mortality, which in a lot of ways is good, because they don't have this existential dread hanging on their shoulders all the time.
It allows them to like learn what they are good at, what they like, before fear takes over and stops them from trying new things.
But it also makes them
easy targets.
Yeah, easy targets, not just like of other people, but of happenstance. Like, you know.
Yeah, well, like my son is the clumsiest person in the world. Like when he was a baby and he was not even walking, he was still crawling. He would fall over, crawling, like fall on his face. But he still tries to like climb on the top of the couch and like jump off it onto the coffee table. They're just fighting over a toy.
Do you have anything more about pop culture or Hollywood? I was thinking about Voodoo Donuts, but I kind of don't.
That's a whole
it
would
take
more.
Like so long, and also
I don't think I have anything else like, without getting into like a whole new.
It's very circumstantial, despite my absolute certainty that there is sex trafficking going on there. You can look into it if you want. Look into Voodoo Donuts in Portland, in the crotch of Portland, where they advertise towards children, to families. Let's be fair. They advertise to families, but then they have a donut that is shaped and called cock and balls. Like, and when I've been there, there's 1 out of 4 people in the line are children, and it's disgusting. Whether or not they do have sex trafficking, are involved with sex trafficking.
Well, there's kind of a lot of that. Like, children are being pretty sexualized. They are, and it's something that's like easy to miss until you start looking for it, and then you realize that it's everywhere.
Like there's like 6-year-olds who are dressing like 20-year-old hookers. And it's not because
you notice how like
it's not
toddlers' clothes have changed.
Oh, it's awful.
Like when we were kids, we wore like a lot of like sweatpants and like sweaters and stuff.
I swear,
and
when
now
we were kids, like, they intentionally
with
made
dresses and like
get out.
Like dress like tiny. They look like tiny adults.
Yeah, and it's wrong. They wear mini skirts without leggings. Like if we had, I remember anytime I wore a dress or a skirt as a kid, I had opaque tights or leggings on underneath.
Yeah,
it,
my daughter
or
has to
shorts
wear
in the
leggings
summer.
with her skirts. She doesn't even know
But-
that people wear like she was laughing at me because I was wearing a dress recently and I wasn't wearing pants under it. She's like, "That's weird.
Oh,
Why are you wearing pants?"
We should save this for like the fashion industry, dark
Oh, yeah,
side
yeah,
of
yeah.
fashion, but not to get into that too much. But because we'll do that maybe next week, maybe another week.
Yeah, I mean it's hard to like end one topic to leave another topic open because it kind of all
It does.
runs into.
But we'll save that for next time. So
The sky is falling. The world is ending right now.
we hope you enjoyed this video, and
If you want, like, comment, subscribe. Don't be a troll. Please. There's a notification bell. I hear that it doesn't work at all. I don't know. And
off and on. Hopefully we
yeah.
won't get censored. This new censor shadow ban going
Yeah,
on.
it's very possible. Apparently, if you have an opinion,
anything
you are
where you're like, the world is not great,
and they can
outside of these other
you
ways
down
I'm
the
not allowed to
algorithm.
say. I'm allowed to say it's not great. Like there's certain things where you're like allowed to say this sucks, but other ways they're like, nope. A video on my other channel was like shadow banned, but
oh yeah.
anyway,
Nice.
Tune in next Friday.
Oh yeah, at 3 p.m. Eastern
or 12 p.m. Pacific for the next
Yeah,
Renaissance
cool.
in Parallel. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.